There we go.
Hello and welcome to the TecQuipment Wednesday Q&A live session from the team here at TecQuipment. My name's Dion Knowles and I'm the marketing manager, and I'm also joined by Dave Goodings, the ICT manager. We have a very special guest joining with us today as well. We have Victor Fitzjarrald, who is the VP of Academic Services at Creative Learning Systems. Thank you for joining us, Victor. Are you there?
Thanks for having me.
Good. So everybody who's joining us live, and I'd just like to say to the guys with me, Victor, YouTube is telling me we've got excellent connection, which is ace. So I'd like to first of all say, yes, we are live, and apologies in advance if we have any technical challenges. Those who joined us on Instagram will have seen firsthand what happens when the internet drops out and how we cope with that. I think it was pretty well. I'd like to do a shout out first of all to Durgesh Burodi. Yeah, Durgesh, do let us know where you're from. It's wonderful to know the global representation of attendees during these sessions. Right, so I'd like to, first of all, let's go back to our guest, Victor Fitzjarrald. Victor, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what we're going to be talking about with you today, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm Victor Fitzjarrald. I'm the Vice President of Academic Services for Creative Learning Systems. We are located just outside of Denver in the United States, and where it is just about 7 a.m. So it's still morning for us here. But I work for a company, Creative Learning Systems, that our goal is to engage as many students as possible every day. And that is our mission statement. And we work with around 600 schools across the United States, K-12, to provide STEM education resources to students and teachers. And that's everything from lesson planning and training to actual physical equipment and kits and apparatus for kids to use.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Victor. Victor, we're going to be talking today about the importance of STEM, retention rates on courses, engagement for students. First of all, I'd like to talk about, yes, we've got STEM and we've got STEAM and STREAM. Why do you believe it's so important that students or, even kids working up to becoming adults and students, why it's so important that they have a rounded knowledge base of those topics, even if they're going to study something like civil engineering, for example?
Yeah, I'm going to take a minute and tell you a story, just that's your warning. Story time.
Okay.
When I was the director of technology for a school, I had a partner that I relied on quite a lot, who was a graphics designer. And Ben actually worked for a kind of pretty high-powered graphics design and creative design company before he left there because of personal reasons. But he always used to relate a story that I think kind of illustrates the point. He knew I was a web programmer and I was a tech guy, so we could kind of share the story and kind of walk with it. But the idea here is that he was often called in to do design for large companies like Walmart or Tesco or something like that. He helped invent the Dos Equis man, for example. So large brands. And he was sitting down in a branding meeting and kind of scoping out a website design. And he started just playing with, okay, well, what if I build a website where everything, instead of being normal, horizontal, or vertical, is offset at 30-degree angles. So basically, the website was built diagonally.
Okay.
And it looked great in Photoshop and in the initial designs. And then when he passed it to his IT team, they said, if you actually propose this to a customer, we will kill you. Which was exactly the response that he was expecting. So he actually did that entire mock-up just to anger his IT side. And so, like, illustrating that point, he went to art school. He was a graduate art major. He did all of that stuff that you would expect for a creative artistic director, but he knew enough technology to be dangerous. And I think that's kind of where we want to put most students these days, is giving them the foundation in a wide range of engineering, science, math, STEM tools so that they can actually build a website. They can start thinking out of the box of one discipline and applying the knowledge from other disciplines to enrich the learning that they're doing and the products that they're creating. And then, hopefully, if we do that for long enough, these things like COVID won't matter as much because we'll have out of the box thinkers that can come up with solutions a lot faster.
Brilliant. That was really, really useful. Now, I have got a question for you, Victor. Do you play that instrument that is hung on your wall behind you?
I do. I play it poorly. It's a mandolin, but
Right.
it's great. I've been playing for 5 years or so.
Have you been practicing in lockdown, become some great pro? Or what do you think?
I used to practice a lot more before I had 2 children.
Oh,
So
yeah,
they tend to eat
actually,
all
you've
the
got a
time.
newborn. Who's got time from sleeping? Brilliant.
Yep.
Thank you, Victor. Dave. Now, Dave is not in his usual setting today.
No.
Dave is usually in his home office, but Dave is joining us from Burton-on-Trent. Are you, Dave?
Yeah, Burton-on-Trent General Hospital. Another family chapter.
Okay, but you're okay.
I'm good. Yeah, it's just an unusual environment to be in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're keeping fingers crossed that the hospital Wi-Fi is strong enough to maintain Dave's presence for us today.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Great, good. So we've just wanted a quick shout out to Silvio from Nova Didacta in Brazil. It's brilliant to see you with us again.
Hi, Silvio.
This week. Right, Dave, now this week I want to talk about engines in particular.
Oh, good. Good.
Now, some things you can buy standalone, sometimes you buy a whole bundle. Why would you bother buying a whole bundle? Are there cost-saving benefits, or are there some other benefits of getting an engine bundle rather than just...
Well, if you're talking about bundles, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you're referring to the engine bundle, the ECA, which
yes,
allows
yeah.
Yeah, okay, I thought so. It gives you extra scope and in experience. So we are able to look at what's happening inside the cylinder of your engine. So we introduce a pressure cylinder, a pressure transducer, sorry, and an angle encoder. So that allows us to look at the pressure against the volume inside your cylinder, and also we can observe the pressure against the crank angle in the cylinder, so we can see 2 important curves and graphs that's actually happening inside the engine. So it brings great value as an addition to your engine setup. Now, this bundle, it is an option. It's not essential. It does come with its own software where you can record data, export to Excel. So it does extend the scope of the TD200 engine test set.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. Now we're going to go back to Victor. A moment ago, for those who've just joined us live on YouTube today, do just as a quick reminder, do put your questions in the chat box and we'll post those to our guest, Victor Fitzjarrald, who's a VP of Academic Services at Creative Learning Systems, or to our technical expert, Dave Giddings. Now we've got Victor at home with his mandolin and his young family early in the morning. So we really appreciate you being with us, Victor. Victor's talking about STEM and getting pupils involved early and a wide breadth of interest in engaging students. But now I'd like to think about coming back to the universities and colleges and academics there. What do you think they can be doing to improve the intake of courses that are related to STEM, i.e. our engineering courses? What do you think they could be doing to lure more students into that world?
Well, tying in with Dave, just buy more engines, I think is the thing. If I was playing with engines every day, I would find that pretty engaging. And I think that is exactly what we're talking about here is, okay, so if universities are going to retain students, both as a university system and as a professor or an instructor, you have got to engage students. And you can do it but through clubs, you can do sports, you can do all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the kids are in your classroom as an instructor. And you have a lot of say in how they are engaged in the academics and the learning that's occurring in that university system. And so anything you can do, whether it's, getting some engines, looking at cylinders, looking at pressure, looking at, all of that stuff that you can do in a hands-on and engaging way, or other means of engaging kids. As we talked about kind of in the Instagram live version, there's tons of research in education psychology going back all the way back to William James around engagement and how engagement is contagious. Like if kids are engaged in the learning and the activities that are occurring, even so much as saying like they're engaged with their friends who are in the same class, that engagement will transfer to the course material. So, the easiest way.
I'm on YouTube at the moment. Okay.
The easiest way the easiest way to retain folks is to really just make sure that they're engaged. Unfortunately, there's no one size fits all for that. But listen to your students, look at what's engaging, plan lessons based around the idea of what are the students doing in my class and how are they going to be the most engaged. And then you're heading in the right path.
Right, brilliant. And in terms of what we've got these challenges of we're in lockdown, many people are studying from home, working from home. What would you be recommending in terms of engaging all, levels of students at the moment?
Well, so the first thing that I would recommend is actually getting the students involved in that process. So what does it mean for the student to be involved? And ask them, does it mean that you're going to sit down with your morning coffee and you're going to have a chat with your classmates? Does it mean that you're going to have a designated workspace? All of those are research-based, but it comes back to, okay, well, how does that work for you and your family? In the K-12 sphere in the US, we're dealing with everything from, kids only having access to devices for 45 minutes a day because their parents need to use the computer to do their work. So engaging those kids in, okay, well, I have you for 45 minutes. What are you doing today? How are you going to work on it? And how are you going to show me tomorrow when we connect for 45 minutes that you have learned? And the context of that learning is in the setting you're in. It just depends on, it is up to you to prove to me, the instructor and the facilitator, that you've mastered the material that I have given to you. And so, you could do that with chemistry experiments in your sink, or you could do that with watching YouTube videos and doing lectures. And kind of giving that ownership to the students, I think, helps them feel connected to the learning that's going on.
Yeah. Well, I certainly know that kind of approach definitely works in my house. As I was mentioning earlier on Instagram, if you try and get the kids to work through a workbook or something, but if you find a way that works for them and say, okay, well, you want to learn about this, then if you'd rather do a presentation or I use Lumen 5 a lot for creating presentations, create one of those on the computer instead, or let's draw it instead, or let's do a video about it instead. But as long as we somehow get it in your head, then that's all that matters, really. I think it's having that freedom to be creative sometimes and think boundaryless, I suppose, isn't it? And
exactly. And
having the acceptance
and really
that that's okay.
And let the kids kind of gauge their own engagement. So if they're super engaged in video games, even like there are tons of video games that you can steer kids toward, that if you start asking the right questions, they're going to have to start learning things as they play.
And you need to tell me those, because I really need those in my life, in my son's life. Let's put it that way.
All right, I'll send you an email with those instructions.
Yeah, brilliant. Great. Well, I mean, I actually, sometimes it's on YouTube or certain types of YouTube videos. I found that some of my son's friends are watching YouTube videos about making things. One friend made a Hoover out of a tin can with his dad. I mean, his dad's an electrician, so he's got a good skill set to help him achieve that. But as a result of watching these videos that he was engaged in, they went off and learned something and really got on board with that. Brilliant. So thank you for that, Victor. Just to remind everybody who's watching us live, quick shout out to Oluyumuya from Adufa from South Africa. I'm really sorry I pronounced that incorrectly. We've got David Court who's joined us again. Jing J. Luau. We will be making this available on demand. You can use the same link that you're watching this right now. It will be available to watch on demand, and you can share that link with anybody else. You can also watch back previous live stream Q&As on the live stream event playlist, and there'll be a few links coming up shortly at the end of this to those additional live stream Q&A sessions. I also want to say hello to Hugo in Brazil. Hugo joined us on Instagram and he's back. Thank you for sticking with us, Hugo. That's fantastic. So I'm hoping that Dave might be available again. Dave is in a hospital car park. It wasn't
yeah,
planned.
get it right. I'm here. I'm here.
Good. Brilliant. So Dave, we were talking about engines earlier. Now we have some turbines, and I'm going to see if I can quickly pull up these turbines for everybody to see very quickly. We've got a couple of different types of gas turbines.
We do.
Now we can do reheat on these. Why would you bother having reheat? What scenario? Let me see if I can change.
Well, in the real world, Dion, or well, reheat, aka afterburner, it gives the plane an extra bit of thrust to either get it into trouble or get it out of trouble. Okay, so reheat. What we do, and in the real world, what really happens is just neat, pure fuel is dumped into the exhaust of the jet, which ignites itself and it gives it an extra bit of thrust. And we can demonstrate that on our GT100 RS. So the afterburner is an add-on. Okay, you can either buy the GT100 without the afterburner option, or you can purchase it with the afterburner. So this is real life piece of kit. It uses commercial fuel. Kerosene is the old name for it, known now as Jet A1. So it's real life. It spins at over or around about 100,000 RPM, which is about 1,600 revs per second. So this is fast. It screams. It doesn't run on propane like some other manufacturers use, which is inherently dangerous. So it's a very, very dynamic piece of kit. Same with the GT185, which is the 2-shaft gas turbine. That doesn't have afterburner because it's a completely different setup. You would see the 185 in use in helicopters, on hovercraft, in tanks, for example. So you've got, like it says on the title, the first turbine, it powers the second turbine, also known as the power turbine, and that delivers the energy to whatever it's driving. So both use kerosene, both have the same footprint, and I've had the pleasure of installing these at a lot of military schools around the world, in Algeria, in BAE, British Aerospace, in Dhahran, in Saudi, and in the UK, of course, the Royal Air Force, to name but a few. So a very, very exciting piece of apparatus.
Dave, can you open up? I don't believe this is true, but I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. Can you retrofit the afterburner option onto the other gas turbines?
No, it really does have to come back to the factory. We have to do some modifications to the jet pipe. We have to introduce more thermocouples and more pressure transducers and instrumentation which goes onto the side of the unit. So it can be done, but it would have to come back to TQ to be done and tested, of course, you know.
Right, okay. Reasonably big job then. It's not something that
Yeah,
you
and
take like, you can't just
it's
have a little kit and chuck an afterburner on, not like you can do with our hydraulic bench upgrade kits.
No, we can't expect customers to drill into jet pipes and seal transducers. That's a bit unfair.
No, there's massive safety issues. So we would not suggest anybody makes modifications to their equipment.
No,
when,
but
particularly
if anyone's considering upgrading, it's worthwhile. Seeing a meter long jet of fire coming out of the back is pretty exciting, you know. I love it. It's my favorite. One of my favorites.
Brilliant. Well, Dave will be talking more about that tomorrow in thermodynamics webinar, where we'll be looking at providing an overview of practical teaching for understanding thermodynamics, and these are included in that session. So I'm going to give Dave a little rest, and hope that Victor is still awake with us. I'd go back to Victor now. Victor, you're still there. The baby's still asleep. We've not heard from said little child.
Hello.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Okay. Well, Victor, we were talking about how to improve intake in courses. What about retention on courses? What do you think? What would you be recommending to make sure that we keep retention rates high? Because it's always a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. So, you know, the underpinnings of a ton of the research and the theory right now is kind of saying engagement is the key to a lot of the ills in education, to retention rates, to kind of student learning and efficacy. All of that can be changed if the students are more engaged in what they're doing, whether that's, you know, sports or it's academics or whatever that may be. And so that's kind of the first step. But the second real step there is wanting to make sure kids are interested, to be completely frank. You know, we stuffy old experts sometimes are a little bit stuffy because we love what we're doing. And so we can amble on about, you know, in my case, Plato and education theory and William James and all of that stuff for hours at end, and people don't really care. At the end of the day, it comes down to, are we engaging the community that we're serving? And if we are, then that's great. And so start thinking a little bit outside the box. You know, like we just started thinking about, well, how do we approach math as an example? And does math have to be a linear progression? Do you have to know addition and subtraction before you learn multiplication and division, for example?
Okay.
And we've always thought about it that you have to, but in reality, are those skills required before you learn multiplication? And is multiplication more like addition than it is subtraction? And, you know, I mean, and so there are interesting questions when you start kind of thinking outside of the box, as we kind of talked about before, of, you know, just because we've always done it one way and it's the way that it's always worked for us before, doesn't mean it's going to connect with the kids who are here in front of me today. And so how do we kind of build a system that's both rigid and flexible in that way, that allows us to kind of cover the content that we must cover, but in a way that's the most engaging and kind of directly applicable to the students in the classroom? And so like teaching thermodynamics with an afterburner turbofan jet engine sounds fantastic. So, you know, or mechanics with ball runs and things like that, or, you know, gravity tables, all of that is a fantastic way to start approaching the way that you think about your traditional lecture course. So how can we make every class period more like what we would traditionally say is a lab? So kids are hands-on, they're engaged, and they're working on it.
Brilliant. That's really, really good information. Now I've just pulled up your website. You've got Creative Learning Systems. Now I thought it might be a great opportunity to tell us a bit more about what you do at that lower level stages before getting to university and college through the use of your Smart Lab program.
Yeah. So our flagship product, the one that we've been installing for 30 years, we call a smart lab. And a smart lab is a space where we teach students to learn. Okay, so the content is flexible in one of these spaces. And it really is designed to give students a broad range of skills across 8 different disciplines. But the real skill that we're teaching and the real content we're covering is teaching students how to design their own projects, explore a topic, and come up with results, to learn every day, to learn on their own, to answer questions and solve problems, and then at the end of a project, share their results with their community. And that's really what we aim to teach through these kind of K-12. And we start kind of in the pre-K and kindergarten age range with basically toys, things you'll go to the store down the street and you can buy there. But we hand curate and we make sure that they are indestructible for little hands, that they're manageable for kids to kind of go in. They're not going to eat them and die or things like that. And then we package that with all of the materials that are necessary for kids to learn with it. And so it might be a circuit board that comes with pie pans and Play-Doh and clay and modeling equipment so that kids can build integrated circuits. But it also is all contained in what we provide. Cool. And so then as the kids progress, they start off in elementary school or in primary with kind of toy-like items, and then they get more serious and more serious as they progress in age, so that by the time they're in high school, they're basically designing integrated circuits that are sewn into fabric. So they're building, like they're designing their own shirts, they're doing all of that stuff, doing vinyl cutters, laser engravers, 3D printers, CNC mills, all of that stuff that we would kind of call is maker, coupled with all of the stuff like designing websites in Dreamweaver and WordPress and Photoshop and those things, so that kids have the foundation to, 1, make a product, and 2, do all of the marketing and collateral and all of that stuff that they would need to market a product and write a business plan and take it to market. And those are the skills that we teach kind of K-12.
Brilliant. Sounds brilliant. I think I need some of these kits at home. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Victor. That's really, really helpful. Now, I'd just like to remind everybody, if you're watching this live, you can put your questions to Victor in the chat box. Don't be afraid to ask him controversial questions about education approaches. Victor's tooled up with his coffee and ready to go. And I'm sure if he's having any problems, he'll strike out that mandolin to distract you. Anyway, we'll give Victor a break. He can have a bit of mandolin practice. And we're going to go back to Dave in the car park to talk about, I'd like to talk about benchtop heat exchangers, Dave. You still there? That hospital Wi-Fi.
I'm still here. I've got a few minutes left of my internet voucher. So.
Oh, right. Okay. We'll make this quick then.
Yeah. No. We'll see how it pans out.
Right. Good. Well, okay. So we've got, I like this piece of apparatus, the heat exchanger unit.
Oh, yeah.
All the different heat exchangers you've got in there, which is part of the thermodynamics range, which we'll be talking about more at the webinar tomorrow at 1 p.m. BST. But Dave, we've got these many different experiments, which you can see in this little video here. Are they easy to switch out? Can a student do that? Could you just lay them all out on the bench and say, right, okay, crack on, you've got 3 hours, do all the different experiments on this different heat exchangers and swap them out for us? Yeah,
we encourage students to get off their cell phones, get their sleeves rolled up and get them to swap out those exchangers. By nature of its design, it's easy, it's fast, it's got self-sealing water connections. There's no risk of any flooding. They are screwed on by 4 thumb screws in each corner. Takes about, I can do it in less than a minute to swap out 3 of the exchangers. The last one, the jacketed vessel and stirrer, takes a little bit longer because there's a bit more to it. Okay, you've got its own dedicated water supply and drain, and there's some extra electrical connections to take into account. But for the most part, it's a very fast swap over. So we want the students to do this. So the concentric tube, shell and tube, and flat plate, they all take about a minute or two each to swap out. And the D option, what you see there, takes a little bit longer, but designed to be fast and easy.
How long? You know, if you were to do a comparison between these different heat exchangers, would you do that in one lab, or do you think you'd need to do it in multiple labs?
You can do it in
So
one
if
lab.
you've got a 3-hour lab session.
Oh, if you've got 3 hours, the critical point is waiting for the system to get to a steady state. Okay, so when all the temperatures are steady, everything's in equilibrium. So you can certainly do that. Those all four in a 3-hour lab test. There is a water heater at the back of the unit. Having that filled up prior to students entering the lab, having that warmed up to a temperature before they start will save a lot of time as well. Okay, but you could execute all of those experiments in that lab time you mentioned.
Okay. Now, if you were to, do you have to buy all four? Is it going to be, where would you start if you were just to get one or two, for example?
Well, you know, I'd start at the beginning of the alphabet. I'd go with the A option and the B option. It all depends on what specific type of heat exchanger the course is looking at. So if it's looking at oil and gas, then you'd see a lot of concentric tube heat exchangers in oil refineries. So it all depends on where the area of interest is there, Dion. But for me, the A, B, and the C, I'd have them all. Okay. Yeah. But if it's budget dependent, then just run with the A. When available budget becomes available, expand to the B, C, and D.
Okay, and you can't. I'm sure I've had somebody asking about putting oil inside of. You're talking about oil refineries putting oils inside of the concentric tube.
No.
That's a no.
Our customer care would be very busy that day if they dared to do that. Yeah.
Right. So it's just sticking with awards and home as it. Although, why can't you use oil in that particular piece of, this TD360A?
Block all the pipes down.
Right.
The reservoir is designed for water, and we don't want to be heating up oil in the heater at the back of the unit. Don't
want a chip pan situation rather.
That's a big no-no.
Okay, that is fantastic, Dave. Thank you so much for that. I just want to remind everybody that we're going to be wrapping up fairly soon. I'm going to hop over to Victor shortly. In the meantime, while I'm chatting to Victor, have a think of any of those technical questions you'd like to ask Dave. Dave is still on the line with us and still able to answer your questions. So, Victor, are you still there? I'm hoping you're still there.
Yes, I am. Fantastic.
Okay. So, Victor, it's really difficult at the moment with COVID-19. Some universities and colleges and even schools are thinking about how do they do remote learning, particularly going into September, October timeframe. What do you think will be the impact on education of COVID-19 going forward? I know that's a really tricky question based on what you know now. Let's put it that way.
I would actually say that's the billion-dollar question right now.
It is, isn't it?
So in the U.S. things are, it's my bread and butter. So let me kind of speak to that, and then you can kind of correlate things to the UK a little bit and other places where folks are. Most of the education funding in the U.S. comes from tax dollars. And that's from sales tax, it's from all of that stuff. So if people are out buying stuff, education is well funded. If people are not out buying stuff, like in the middle of a pandemic, we have budget crunches, coupled at the same time with saying, hey, you've got to stay 6 feet apart. And whoever thinks that you can get a group of third graders and keep them 6 feet apart is kind of laughing.
Yeah.
So we've got all of these constraints in education. But we also have to face the reality that education in the US is more than just a place where kids go to get educated. It is a place where kids go to get meals. It's a place where kids go to get essential health services. It's a place where kids go when parents can't do daycare. And so we've got kind of two competing ideas here. So one is the learning can occur, and the learning can occur anywhere. Like we're at a point now where YouTube, the internet, the resources that we have are available so that anyone can learn from anywhere. We used the example before of, what if you were learning about anthropology while you were standing at Stonehenge? Like that's a great idea. Or in the Southwest with, Native American historical sites, you could do the same thing. And so really framing that learning in the context of the geography or the area in which you are makes a ton of sense. But that's just the learning component, right? And so the learning component we can take care of in the digital sphere. But the other components are a lot more difficult. So there's kind of staggering statistics around the US about how many meals, like actually our meal system in schools is designed that kids can get 100% of their caloric intake at school, so that they actually don't need any additional nutrition outside of the public school system.
Wow.
And so when you think about that, of like, there are some kids who really, the only consistent meals they get are at school. How do we replicate that in a digital way? And so that's why you'll see like news footage of schools putting together bagged lunches and handing them into cars and things like that. And so it's really trying to meet both of those. And so I think where we'll end up in August or September as schools come back is in a hybrid, where kids spend some of their time in school and some of their time doing digital. And we've heard rumors of varying amounts of that kind of blended learning, where kids will be in class for a week and then they'll go and do a week at kind of at home and doing their work. But that has issues with parents and daycare and all of that stuff as well. So there's kind of a lot of variability that we're seeing right now in the education market, K-12, about how school systems are going to be returning. But the larger emphasis now is on, do we have internet? Do we have devices? Do we have meals for our kids? Can we get them all the services that they need and the health and kind of mental health supports that they would have in school at home? And then can we make sure that the learning is the best learning? And so, most educators are focused the other way on let's make the learning the best, but most education systems are focused on the other side of things. How do we make sure the kids are safe and have everything that they need?
I think in terms of, you were talking also earlier on Instagram about IT, and I think was it Phoenix University there at distance, and that being one of the biggest challenges.
Absolutely. I've been watching university systems, and I think it was it Cambridge that was one of the first ones that came out and said, hey, we're going to do all of our schooling online next year. And one of the immediate reactions I saw from folks here in the US was, graduates of 2020, you're going to be going on to your Ivy League schools, which are now all online with less technical support than you would have if you just went to an online school, which is pretty true. Like a brick and mortar school, like if you take Cambridge, they have a lot of supports to just make sure that the school operates. So, they're spending money on facilities and on groundskeeping and all of that stuff that now actually has no impact on the learning that's occurring. And so when you look at schools that are built for all online learning, they're kind of organized a little bit different, right? They have instructors and then they have their IT people, and that's really it. And so now in this world of everyone switching to digital, it's going to be interesting in universities and colleges to see how they prioritize funding that way. Of, the spaces are less important now than they were before, but the IT has just gotten elevated, and we need to make sure that works 100% of the time. And
well,
so
I've certainly had some people get in contact with me about how do we create lab experiment videos from some of those big universities. It's lab technicians going, well, what do we do? Where do we go? So it's a massive challenge for them right now. And it's really, for me, I think it's what are the students' expectations? Because you can record a video, for example, but it's not interactive. It's just, you could go and watch a YouTube video. But maybe
Right.
the way forward is like we're doing now, we're doing live streams. It might not be such a good quality, and we can all see from the bandwidth issues that we've experienced sometimes today. But what it does do is it gives people that opportunity to really engage, going back to that phrase, engage, isn't it? But then it'll be, what's the lasting impact from all of that? Will it just be a glitch, or that we all get over in 6-12 months, or are there going to be things that stay etched in our minds and our processes for the future?
Well, and then think about it as, we can all shoot a video. I've got a 3D printer right here that I could, do a tutorial video on right now if we wanted to. But what it comes down to is, okay, well, how do we engage the kids? Exactly as you said. So instead of shooting a 10-minute video, maybe I shoot a 1-minute video and I say, okay, well, great. Like, here's what the 3D printer does. Here's what I'm going to do with it. What do you think I should do next? And then give 3 different options for 3 different 1-minute videos that I'm going to shoot, that then the kids can click and say, oh, yep, I got the introduction. And, oh, what happens if you click this button? And, oh, I'm going to click that link, and here's what happens. So it's, think of it as a choose your own adventure story instead of a tutorial video.
Great idea. That's an absolutely fantastic idea, because I am talking to one of the big universities at the moment, trying to help them find a way forward, and that's certainly something that I want to go back to them, and maybe she's watching today, because I think that's a fantastic way forward, where you get the quality of pre-record, but you do get them engaged and leading their own path. Brilliant ideas. Fantastic. Blended learning you mentioned there. Is that the way forward?
I think we've been trending that way for a really long time, and now we just got a kind of kick that put us firmly in that box.
Yeah.
I don't, everybody's in this remote learning method, and I think we'll see varieties of what blended means, between how much time they actually spend in a physical space and how much time they spend at home or anywhere else learning. But I think the name of the game is going to be some sort of blended learning moving forward.
Great. Anything more you want to add, Victor? It's been fascinating. I really have enjoyed this session today. And I know we've had a really great audience watching us, and many more will watch it on demand. Anything more you want to share with the audience?
No, and just thank you for having me here and being able to see all of the kits and equipment that you guys do and how you guys engage students across the world. And I think we work well together, and we're here to support kids as they progress and they engage in their learning, no matter what age they are.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Victor. I'm going to wrap up with you for a moment and then pass over to Dave. So thank you for that. Dave, are you still there with us right now? And I don't know whether his hospital internet is still going or not. Dave has not reappeared. I think one thing that I want to remind everybody is, if you are thinking about creating your own lab experiment videos, we do have a top tips video on YouTube on how to create your own lab experiment videos, things on lighting, on sound, whether you're going to be filming it from your phone or whether you're thinking about getting a camera. We use a Panasonic GH4, for example, and we use a separate lapel mic. There's different levels of quality that you can achieve. There's also freelance video editors out there which take away that massive time sink that can come with the creation of videos. If you've got any questions on that, then feel free to drop us a message, and I might be able to steer you in the right direction. There'll be a link to that top tips video coming in the comments box below. That's it from us today. Thank you so very much, Victor, for joining us. We'll let you get back to your family and your Mandarin practice, or not.
Yes, thank you, Victor.
And oh, sorry, you're back,
Thank
Dave.
you.
I am. I've just been called over by a nurse who's given me a can of Fanta. I mean, how good is that?
I hope you'll be clapping extra hard on Thursday night.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So thank you, everybody. Feel free to share this with people you know. It's available on demand. And we'll see you next week, or we'll see you tomorrow for Thermodynamics Practical Teaching Overview webinar from Dave and myself.
Yeah, I don't know where I'll be performing that from, Dion. It could be anywhere. So we'll watch this space.
We shall look forward to Dave on the road.
These are beautiful, beautiful gardens we've got here, you know.
Well, thank goodness it's great weather out. Let's hope it doesn't rain.
It's absolutely perfect weather, yeah. Okay.
Good. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Victor.
All right. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.